what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
When the last signs of winter finally fade and the weather really starts warming, the world is filled with new sights and sounds and smells. The faint winter scent of fireplace chimneys is replaced by something sweeter wafting across the neighborhood. You know the smell. Somebody sets fire to charcoal. Before long, plumes of smoke start to rise. With it, the smells of hardwood, hickory, apple, cherry. Next thing you know, you can smell that meat cooking down the street. And it smells good. Like maybe a little slice of heaven. Or like maybe you want to finally introduce yourself to that neighbor who's always got something cooking on his back deck and find out how this backyard barbecuer does what he does. Forget the smells. How's that stuff taste and why is it so good? Welcome to the Low and Slow Barbecue Show on the Mesh.tv podcast network. I'm Chigger Willard, and I'm sharing with you the lowdown about the best ways to make barbecue. To do that, I'm introducing you to the people who make all the smoked meat treats. I want you to hear from the pit bosses themselves, whether they're a barbecue celebrity, a competition cooker, or a backyard barbecuer. That's who we'll meet in this episode of the Low and Slow Barbecue Show, a backyard barbecuer who's steeped in the great traditions of Carolina barbecue. In this episode, our backyard barbecuer will tell us how it's done. He'll get into Barbecue 101, a tip to know. There'll be barbecue secret time. We'll dip into the family jewels. Our backyard barbecuer will share his best Carolina barbecue, and we'll wrap it up with the Low and Slow Barbecue Showdown. This episode of the Low and Slow Barbecue Show is presented by Hickory Greenway Harvest, building raised bed gardens to fight hunger and feed a need for greater awareness about agriculture and sustainability. Learn more at hickorygreenwayharvest.org. And to get the complete lowdown from the Low and Slow Barbecue Show, be sure to visit us online, lowandslowbbqshow.com. That's where you'll find the Low and Slow blog. It's filled with recipes from this podcast, as well as barbecue stories, ideas, and more advice for Low and Slow Barbecue. Advice from people like Jeff Osborne, our guest and backyard barbecuer. Jeff, welcome to the podcast. Tell us about yourself. Where are you from? What do you do, Jeff?
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, Jeff Osborne. I'm here in Hickory, North Carolina. Beautiful city. I lived here all my life. Grew up out in the country of Hickory, out in Mountain View, out in what people would call the sticks.
The sticks?
Yeah, the sticks. And that's really where I got my start in barbecuing, being out in the country.
Yeah, let's get to that part, the barbecue. And we want to meet you and all that, but we want to know about the barbecue side of it. So how long have you been smoking meat and making barbecue, and why do you do this?
Oh, how long? I've been smoking meats. I mean, honestly, as long as I can remember, I've been around a grill, been around a smoker. My grandfather was a butcher. And so my dad grew up around meat, and then that carried over into me growing up, just watching my grandfather cook, watching him master the grill at all the family functions. Growing up at my house, our house was always the congregation point for my dad and all his friends, and the grill was always going. My grandfather was, aside from being a butcher, he had a little side catering hustle that he would do, where he would do whole hog pig pickings.
Right, okay. So
that was really
traditional, first kind of barbecue there was, traditional barbecue.
Traditional barbecue, whole hog pig picking, pull it off, chop it up a little bit, throw some sauce on it, serve it to the people.
Yeah, so that's some good heritage there. So let's talk about Jeff's barbecue. What is your barbecue specialty? What are you known for?
As a backyard barbecuer, I'm known for, and my specialty, I'll say, is just straight up pulled pork. Just a good old Boston butt thrown on a simple smoker. Nothing extravagant, nothing's fancy. I don't have a huge, commercialized smoker or anything like that. So we're just talking straight up backyard barbecue, amateur hour, really.
Not an amateur. If you do it and people eat it and nobody dies, you must. Well, maybe you don't get paid for it.
Yeah.
So why do you do the butt, and when do you ordinarily do this sort of a pulled pork variety?
I'll smoke pulled pork. I'll smoke a butt all year long, just because the reason for it is just the versatility, the simplicity, the versatility, the cost of it. I mean, so buying a Boston butt, especially you look around, wait for them to go on sale at one of the local grocery stores. You can get them for 99 cents a pound.
Yeah.
And that's about as cheap a cut as meat
Sure.
you're going to be able to get. So anytime that there's going to be a function, let's call it, big game, college football, Saturday, getting those type things kicked up.
Yeah.
Birthday parties, 4th of July celebrations, any type of summertime gathering activity, I'm usually going to be the guy that people go to and say, "Hey, Jeff, you want to cook some pork for us?"
Yeah, hey, we're having a big party. Why don't you come and bring your pulled pork? Yeah,
Why
so
don't you bring that specialty that you always bring?
yeah, let's talk more about that meat. So what kind of pork? What's the cut? And your ideal size and weight for using that.
Boston butt for me, a bone-in Boston butt. I typically try to stay away from the shoulder cuts and just stick with the butt.
And when I go to the grocery store, it's going to have a sticker that says Boston butt. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
It'll say usually Boston butt roast. Around this area, you're going to see a Smithfield type Boston butt. I think that's one of the largest hog producers here in North Carolina. So you can see that in the store. It's going to range anywhere from $1 a pound to maybe $2 a pound nowadays. But it is such a simple cut. It's got a lot of good fat in it. You don't have to do a lot to trim it, which makes it good. I mean, you can keep it going. You can. The great thing about a Boston butt is just really, like I said, how versatile it is. You can cook a Boston butt as quick as 8 hours if you want to.
Quickly.
Or you can let it go for as long as 18 hours, which a lot of times that's what I'm aiming for.
And what size do you normally try to get?
Around a 9-10 pound butt is about good for me.
Yep.
I found that size to be good enough for as long as I want to cook a butt. The bigger, the 9-10 pounds, 10 pounds, you start getting much bigger than that, then it's really going to become fattier. You're gonna be paying for more fat.
It'll take a little bit longer to cook too, right?
Yep.
So what about the treatment? What do you do to your 9 or 10 pound Boston butt?
So my treatment is really pretty simple. I don't use a binder. I know some people, put a binder on it. We're talking just slathering it with some mustard, and then it doesn't come out in any flavor, but it helps the rub to stick. I don't use a binder. I just go straight up rub, and I season very, very generously.
And you feel like the rub stays on there without the binder?
Yeah, because if I'm cooking and doing what I want to do with it, then we're talking about I've got multiple hours in setting up the rub. Going to put the rub on generously and just let the meat sit there and sweat.
Yep.
And so the natural moisture in the meat is going to start pulling to the surface, and then that kind of creates the binder. When you'd want a binder, like rubbing it with mustard, is if you want to go quick. I've only got 15, 20 minutes before I need to put this on the smoker and I need to get things going.
Yep.
To me, that's when I would use something to sprinkle the meat or sprinkle the seasoning onto it, let it stick to it. You don't have to worry about letting it sweat in and things like that. But to me, I found very, very liberal seasoning and letting it sit and sweat.
Sit out from the refrigerator?
Sit out from the refrigerator. Just sitting.
Do you do it overnight, or you just do it a few hours before?
Just a few hours before. Yeah. And we can get into my overall preparation, but usually I'm an overnight kind of guy.
Yeah.
So if I'm cranking up the smoker, then I'm going to do it at nighttime. So setting that binder up around dinner time, setting up the seasoning, pulling the pork out, letting it start to get to room temperature, putting the seasoning on it, let that sweat a little bit, flip it over, repeat. I trim it a little bit. I do trim my meat.
Okay.
I don't want. There's a lot of fat that comes out of a Boston butt.
That cap can be thick, sure.
The cap can be really thick. And so I will try to trim the cap a little bit if I think the cap is too big. And then there's a lot of, what we would call silver skin, little thin membrane-looking pieces.
Right.
Try to get all that out and try to get any pieces of what looks like just hard fat that's kind of stuck in there. That hard fat and the membrane, that silver skin, it doesn't render down like regular,
Right.
like a regular fat cap would, or just your regular soft fat.
Okay. So you've got it rubbed up, you've let it sit out several hours and sweat and flipped, and you're ready to put it on the grill. Talk to me about what you're cooking it on, and how do you go through cooking it now that you've got it prepared?
Yeah. So I do, like most backyard enthusiasts, I've got several grills. Probably
right.
more.
How many of them are rusted out and still functioning?
None of them really. I've got all of my grills. I've taken care of them. They're all good, solid grills still. But I've got two. What I'll say, I've got two smokers. One is a pellet smoker, so a Traeger style pellet smoker, and then the other is my go-to, which is the Weber Smoky Mountain Bullet.
Oh yeah.
So,
the rocket ship.
Yep, exactly. That Weber Smoky Mountain Bullet, I've had that thing probably 12 years, and it's still...
I know I've got mine 15 years, and it's still great.
Yep.
I hadn't even replaced the evaporator dish.
Nothing.
Yeah.
I haven't touched anything on it. I think the only thing I might have replaced on it is the door, the charcoal.
Right.
The charcoal entry, the door. I think the only reason is because I lost it. Took it on a camping trip,
right?
And then
that's one piece that didn't make it back.
Never made it home. Yeah, so I've replaced that. The Weber Smoky Mountain Grill. You want to talk about consistency and versatility? It's porcelain coated, so it holds heat really, really well. The simplicity of the vents. I think it has 3 vents on the bottom and 1 vent on the top. Once you play around with the grill, you smoke it just a couple times, then this is where my grates are, my vents need to be set. I've got a couple tick marks on mine that tell me if I'm cooking a butt versus cooking chicken.
Right.
I've got different tick marks on the vents to let me know exactly where to put it.
For different temperatures, right? So for your specialty, what's the temperature you generally try to keep it at?
I'm going 225.
Okay.
Yeah. 225. I don't typically want it to go much higher than that.
Okay.
I think that is, in the spirit of this, it's low and slow.
Right, sure.
You can get it to 250, 275, but to me, 225 is where you want to be at. Anything that you can do to keep it there, plus or minus 10 degrees, one way or the other.
What kind of fire bed are you building to create that and maintain that consistent heat? Again, the device, the Smoky Mountain grill or smoker, it retains the heat, but you got to have a fire engine down at the bottom. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so I use Kingsford charcoal.
Right.
I've just found that to be really consistent. I've never changed from it. I've never tried any other kinds of charcoal. Just straight up regular Kingsford you get from grocery store, hardware store, whatever. And I use the minion method.
Okay.
So are you familiar with the minion method?
Nope.
It's
pretend I'm not.
Yeah. So the minion method is it's a real simple method where you take a charcoal basket. So you can fill your charcoal basket up with unlit charcoals.
Right.
Have a really good thick base of unlit charcoals, and then I use a charcoal chimney, and I'll fill 1 basket of charcoal in the charcoal chimney. I'll light that, get that flaming hot, and then I'll spread that across the unlit. And so what the minion method is really doing is you've got that top layer of hot burning coals, which is going to slowly ignite the next layer of unlit coals below it, and so on and so on. So you don't have a full basket of flaming hot coals. You have a basket that's got 1 thin layer of flaming coals, and then your next layer is getting a little bit hotter and hotter, and then it'll just keep
gradually spreading
spreading that
burns
heat
out. Yeah.
Yep.
So what about the wood in there? You're putting that in there too, right?
Yeah. So my method for wood that I found to work best is soaked wood chips. My preference is to have a hickory tree. So if you can find a hickory tree, or if you know somebody that's into lumber or wood and they've cleared some land, that's where I've gotten most of mine. It's people that clear land and find a hickory tree, cut it up into a disc. The disc are probably 2-3 inches thick. Let those age, dry out, and then I'll just go and take an axe or a hatchet and just bust them up into chunks. Then I will soak those hickory chips.
Yep.
If you don't have access to regular wood, you just go to the store.
I got them at the store in bags, right?
You just
apple, cherry, hickory.
Bag.
Yep.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
But for me, hickory and oak work the best for for the for producing the kind of smoke that
Right.
I want. I stay away from mesquite or anything like that.
Yeah, it's a very sharp flavor.
Very
If you're in
sharp, yeah.
Texas and want some post oak,
Yeah, exactly.
kerosene in your barbecue. Apologies to all the Texas listeners.
So I've found that the soaking them it'll create the smoke that you want and the
Right.
smolder, but it really doesn't create any more heat.
It doesn't flame up on you
doesn't
so
flame
much.
up.
Yeah. So how long are you cooking it then?
If I want to really impress people and do it right and do it the way that I want to do it, I'm 18 hours.
Wow.
Anywhere from 16 to 18 hours. So my preference is to say, let's just go with college football kickoff season, right?
Yep.
So we got a Saturday night game. People are going to come over, or we're going to congregate somewhere else. I will get everything ready, have the smoker ready to go by midnight the night before.
Yep.
So midnight the night before, I'm putting the meat on, and then that way it gives me all night. Everybody says if you're looking, you're not cooking, right? I mean, that's the backyard.
You can
barbecue.
look at the gauge all along, right?
You can look at the gauge.
Just make sure the gauge is where it's
But let's
supposed to be.
not open that
The
lid.
vents,
right?
check the vents. No, you've already got them marked.
Yep.
The vents are good.
We know the vents are good, so we're putting that Weber Smoky Mountain. We've got it dialed in right at 225. I can go to sleep, not look at that
Go to
meat.
sleep on your meat.
Yep. Go to sleep on the meat, not look. Wake up the next morning, go out, do a quick little check on the grill, make sure nothing crazy's gone.
Right.
I do have some wireless thermometers. So I've got a wireless meat thermometer and a wireless ambient temperature thermometer.
It's a must-have in the low and slow.
It really is, yeah. And those temperatures, I mean, everything that they've got now, the technology is so great.
Oh, yeah.
You set an alarm. I mean, if that thing
You can be asleep in the bed.
you could be asleep in the bed. If it starts to creep up over 260, that alarm's going off. If it gets down to I've got mine set. If it drops below 200, I know something's gone wrong.
Yeah.
And so alarm goes off. I wake up. I mean, it doesn't happen. I will say that. I mean,
you got a reliable tool. You know your system, your process.
You got a reliable system. Like you said, I mean, you just go to sleep, wake up the next morning, and go do some checks. Put some more. You got to keep feeding it that wood,
right?
So you can get that smoke going.
Now, do you stick the charcoal in the side through the door? Do you try to lift the whole thing up to continue to feed with the wood in the fire?
I never add more charcoal.
Okay.
I mean, if I'm adding more charcoal, then something has gone wrong.
Okay,
right. But the wood chips, just opening up the
continue to add wood.
Front door, toss in some more chips. You can see the smoke. You get that good white smoke.
Yeah.
The key for me is the one thing I always have to pay attention to is the water pan.
Yeah.
And so you got that water pan that's in there. It also, in the Weber Smoky Mountain, it also acts as a heat buffer. It's kind of your heat shield. So anytime, I've got a funny story about not paying attention to my water pan.
Right. We'll get to the funny story in just a minute. Yeah, sure.
But yeah.
But talking about your specialty and kind of keeping it there, how do you know when it's done? You say 18 hours or so. You've slept. You've kind of continued to tend it through the day. Game time is hours away, and you're ready to go. First of all, how do you know it's done? And then how do you prepare it and serve it to the masses once you take it right off the grill?
Yeah. And so the meat itself is going to be what we would call done and servable really anywhere after 10 to 12 hours. You could, the meat's ready. It's good to go.
Right.
But that last, for me, what I found is that last 6 hours, that extra time really renders that fat down. So I'll go out and it's all hand feel, squeeze it, see how much give it's got. Give the bone a little bit of a shake. You give that thing a little shake. You can tell.
You can tell it's loose in there.
This thing is loose, and once you get that bone, and you know that bone's loose, then you got some really tender meat.
Is there a temperature you're looking to try to hit?
205 would be. If you want to get it at 205, and that's really the last several hours of the cook. It's probably going to be hard to keep it at 225, the grill temperature that is. And so the longer and longer you're going, now you're really getting down to that last bed of coals. And so the grill temperature you're almost looking at it like I just want the grill temperature and the meat temperature to all become one, in that 200 to 205 range. That 205 is what most people would say is perfect temperature.
An equilibrium inside the smoker there. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. So I'm ready to pull it off. I know that there's other people that would say, there's backyard barbecue wars on wrap versus non-wrap.
Right. Okay.
I'm not a wrap kind of guy. I feel like when I have wrapped it, it is tender and it's juicy. And if you want to do a 10-hour cook, I would say you definitely want to wrap.
Mm-hmm.
You want to wrap it for that last several hours. To me, it gives it too much of almost like a pot roast consistency.
Okay. Yeah.
For me,
that's different. But you've taken it off the smoker. It's ready.
Yep.
You don't wrap it. You let it rest before you start tearing into it.
I do mop it throughout the cook.
Yep.
So that's one thing that I do some people do, some people don't. I do mop it. I've got a vinegar-based sauce that I use, and I'll mop it, keep that moisture in there. But I pull it off. It's game time. Things are getting kicked off. People are starting to get hungry. I'm not a big let it rest for an hour kind of guy.
Right.
It's 15 minutes top.
Sure.
To me, that last set of the smoke has been it's been cooling down. I mean, that meat's there. I'll pull it off 15 minutes top.
Yeah.
And now I've got these great chemical gloves, like the Dr. Nefario gloves.
Yeah.
They're real thick, like you're getting ready to work with a vat of acid or something.
Rubber thing. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. And so those, I can just dig straight into it. Typically, I do not chop. I've got a huge cleaver and I've got a big cutting block, but I just like to pull it, shred it with my hands.
Yeah,
Let those gloves keep the heat away, so I can just get in there and just start pulling it off and shredding
just with your hands.
Just with my hands, So by this point, the meat's so tender.
Cooked and it's so tender. Yeah,
it's easy to just fall apart. It just shreds apart. I prefer that versus a chop. A lot of my barbecue heritage, even though I've always grown up in Western North Carolina, for some reason I've always gravitated towards Eastern North Carolina style.
Right.
So pulled pork, not as
vinegar.
Yep. Oh yeah, definitely vinegar.
No tomato.
Yeah, no.
We'll get into that a little bit more. You like to serve it up with the vinegar.
I do.
You've got your own special sauce, and we'll have the recipe there. What about buns and sandwiches and those types of things? Do you do that?
I put them out.
Yep. You put them out? You don't?
I put them out. I'm not a barbecue sandwich. When it's pulled off and it's time to eat, I'm not a sandwich kind of guy. For me, there's really going to be 2 or 3 things on my plate. It's pretty easy. It's the pulled pork and then a really good barbecue slaw, which I love barbecue slaw. I love red slaw.
The red slaw, okay.
I'm a Southerner, so a mayonnaise-based slaw is really good too. But when it comes to barbecue,
on your hot dog,
yeah, exactly, yeah. When it comes to serving barbecue, I like the red slaw.
Yeah.
So my plate will have pulled pork and red slaw and a couple sliced pickles.
Sliced pickles, and what are the best sides to go with your barbecue dinner?
Red slaw, and for me, it's red slaw and baked beans.
Yeah. Okay, baked beans.
Good baked beans. If you can get a really good set of baked beans, those are good with it too. And then hush puppies.
Hush puppies, yeah.
Hush puppies.
Right, very good. So, of course, you have to pair the food with a beverage, and what would be your beverage to pair this delectable meal on game day with?
Oh, it's game day, and you've been smoking all day. By the time
18 hours.
Yeah, 18 hours. You got a lot of sleep in there. Some morning time. You mowed grass probably. But by this time, probably at least 6 Miller Lights.
It's cold beer time, right? It's Miller Lite.
Cold beer.
Well, Jeff, this sounds great, and I can't wait to try some. So we're going to take a break, and we're going to go out in the Jeep and get some of your barbecue and eat some, right?
Sounds good to me.
Yes. All right. Looking forward to that. You brought barbecue, right?
Yeah.
You didn't bring barbecue?
I did not bring any barbecue.
Jeff, I thought that was part of the deal here. We're going to have a barbecue podcast, and the backyard barbecuer is going to bring the barbecue, and you cooked overnight. You didn't bring it?
It's still cooking.
Still cooking.
Yeah, still cooking.
We may have to reconsider our first guest here. on the Low and Slow Barbecue Show. But coming up, our backyard barbecuer will take us to BBQ 101. We'll get into his recipe box during the barbecue secret time. He'll also share his choice for favorite barbecue restaurants and see how he fares in the Low and Slow Barbecue Showdown. Don't forget to get the complete lowdown from the Low and Slow Barbecue Show. Be sure to visit us online at lowandslowbbqshow.com. That's where you'll find the Low and Slow blog. It's filled with recipes like the ones Jeff's going to share with us, others from the podcast. We've also got barbecue stories, ideas, more advice for Low and Slow barbecue. Stay tuned for more after the break.
Hey everybody, John Reep here, and I'm with Lauren Weaver of the Hickory Smokehouse, and we have partnered up and we have come up with what we think is the best barbecue sauce in the world. It's called John Reep's Hickory Smokehouse South in Your Mouth Barbecue Sauce. But don't just take our word for it. Listen to what other chefs are saying. So this holiday season, reap the benefits, sop it up, let your taste buds rise again, and put a little South in your mouth.
We got it in hot, too.
Yeah. Thanks, Lauren.
Welcome back to the Low and Slow Barbecue Show on the Mesh.tv. I'm Chigger Willer. I'm joined by our backyard barbecuer, Jeff Osborne. Jeff, let's go to BBQ 101. Let's go to school. Give us one tip, one simple everyday practice that every backyard barbecuer should try to follow.
Get to know your grill. I mean, it's the single most important thing. Is it will make barbecuing, it will make the smoking process so much more enjoyable. If you know your grill, you have trust in the grill, and you don't have to think about it. So know where your vents are going to be set. Practice a couple of times, you know.
Yep.
And that's what's good about a smoked butt. I mean, a Boston butt is just you can't mess it up.
Right, it's hard to mess it up.
It's really hard to mess up. So you can take all that time of not messing it up and work with your vents. I mean, understand the flow of the air and how that flow of air is creating heat and working through.
Right.
I mean, so for me, if I had to give one tip, it's get to know your grill and don't skimp out on your grill either. I mean, the Weber Smoky Mountain that we've talked about a couple times,
right.
It's not a very expensive smoker.
It's not the bottom of the basement cheap smoker, but
exactly.
It's not terribly expensive either.
It's
no.
not terribly expensive when you think about something that you're going to have for, like you said, 15 years.
Right.
You know? I mean, 15 years and we're still going. So don't chip out. I mean, don't get the little thin side wall. You know,
you're going to replace it again for $100 every
and you're going to fight
6 months.
You're going to fight temperature all
right.
day too.
Yeah. Okay.
So get to know your grill, and never ever use lighter fluid. Never use lighter fluid.
But now people wouldn't really do that.
I know some people that have, and you can taste it as soon as you bite into that first bite.
You can. Yeah, not even like the match light stuff, but it's so easy to light,
I
Jeff.
know,
The match light.
Use that charcoal chimney.
Yeah.
Anybody that hasn't used a charcoal chimney, go pick one up.
Yeah, I mean,
they're so easy.
Definitely gets the
So
fire
easy.
started, and so that's the tool of the trade, I guess. You know, the one thing that you really need to have is a charcoal chimney to get this party started.
For me, yeah. I
Know
mean,
your grill.
Know your grill. Charcoal chimney.
Charcoal chimney. Yeah. Okay, so you talked about the Weber Smoky Mountain, you know, and it is kind of I'm guessing your grill of choice. And we talked a little bit about its strengths and its weaknesses, but talk to me a little bit about, you know, some of these other things, because you mentioned the Traeger and the pellet grill. You know, how does the Weber Smoky Mountain stand up to those things, and why is one better than, you know, a gas or a pellet grill or maybe something else?
It's really the how it imparts flavor into the meat. The anytime you're cooking with charcoal or wood for that purpose, is like you're getting the flavor of that charcoal. You're getting the flavor of the smoked wood as well. Whereas if you're cooking on a gas grill or even a gas smoker or a pellet smoker, the pellet smokers are definitely going to put off a little bit more smoked flavor than a gas grill is going to.
Right.
Both of those they're really good for heat consistency. I mean, pellet smoker is so easy. You set the temperature gauge, and I will say, I mean, I've got one. I use it from time to time to cook pork butt, but I never use it if I really want to impress people.
Yeah.
It's for convenience. I mean, they're so super convenient.
It's one of those, hey, I just got this at the store and dinner's going to be tonight,
Yep.
and I may as well just go ahead and cook it.
Might as well go ahead and cook it. Let's
Yeah.
cook some of this up. That'll be more of a 10-hour, 12-hour, and probably a wrap in there too if I'm going to use the Traeger, because then you're not worried about the smoke so much. But there are things that you can do to make if you have a Traeger or if you have a pellet smoker or something like that, or a charcoal grill,
Right.
there are smoke tubes, and they work great. I have one. I have a smoke tube for whenever I am cooking with a Traeger. You can buy cold smoke machines that produce smoke for things like that.
Okay.
So if you've already got one and you want to find a way
Take
to
it
make
up
it
a
a little
notch.
bit better,
Right.
get a smoke tube, get a cold smoker type system, and then you're putting in that smoke. You're getting that extra smoke along with the consistent heat of a pellet smoker.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a moment, Jeff, and share some secrets about barbecue. I want to know your recipe for your rub and your sauce and whatever's special. And if it's special, let's let our audience know it's special, because, I mean, honestly, there's not a lot of secrets in these recipes.
Right.
It's the process and how you do it. So let's get started with your rub. Tell me the secrets of the rub.
Are we in a non-disclosure here?
Sure, yeah. You and me and everybody that's listening.
right.
None of us will tell anybody, but we'll put it to good use.
My rub is a basic Carolina, what I'll call a sweet and heat type rub. It follows a ratio, really, a 6 to 3, 2 to 1. So think of that as
Wait.
parts,
So
you know?
what? 6-3-2-2. Are we calling?
Yeah. So that way you
date?
can 6 3
Call
2
Jenny?
2 1. You can change it to whatever volumes you want. Right?
Okay,
So
okay.
let's just think of it in cups. 6 cups of brown sugar, 3 cups of fresh ground black pepper, and I will say that that's probably what I do different than others that I've seen.
Right.
Is I buy fresh peppercorns and then use a coffee grinder to grind the peppercorns, and so I can get
And
those.
what difference does that provide?
Think of it as coffee.
Right.
You
Well,
think
it's
a whole
fresher
bean,
too. Yeah.
You grind a whole bean of coffee. You're opening it up right then. And you're
Right,
getting
okay.
that. So to me, that's what I've found. I mean, fresh ground, coarse pepper,
Mm-hmm.
plus you can use the coffee grinder. You can get it to whatever coarseness you want. So if you want a thicker, a bigger chunk pepper, which is what I want out of this, you can
Versus
get
an
that.
espresso or something very fine.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Instead of getting something fine. So I will use a coffee grinder for my pepper, and that's one. So 6 cups of brown sugar, 3 cups of coarse ground black pepper, 2 cups of kosher salt, 2 cups of garlic powder, and then the last one for me is 1 cup of cayenne pepper.
Wow.
So that's kicking up.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously this is going to make us a large batch. So you can break it down in whatever ratio. And remind everybody, visit our website, lowandslowbbqshow.com. We're going to have Jeff's recipes up there on the blog. Look for them there, and he'll give you all the details. So that's our rub, and we'll put that up there on the blog, 63221. Still sounds like a phone number from somebody I remember
Exactly.
from high school. But let's talk about what else you do. You mentioned this mop sauce, which is interesting. Not everybody does that. Tell me what the mop is all about.
Yeah, I picked this one up from my grandfather, watching him take a gallon jug of apple cider vinegar. Some people say go half and half apple cider and white vinegar. I just go straight apple cider vinegar. So a gallon of the apple cider vinegar, and then half stick of butter, and then a half cup of crushed red pepper flakes.
Okay.
So again, you're getting some of that heat, right?
Right.
You're getting that crushed red pepper flakes. You're putting that into your mop sauce. It'll transfer from the mop sauce over to the meat as well when you start to mop it. But I'll bring that to, I'll start to heat it to melt that butter and get that butter thick into it, and then let it cool. And then usually what I'll do is pour it back into that gallon jug that I had for the cider.
Okay.
For the mop, I'll keep it over in a bowl so that it's easier for the mop to get in. But I'm also going to use that as my barbecue sauce.
Okay, right.
So that the mop
sauce
and
the sauce are the same.
The sauce are the same.
Great.
And
So
apple
when do you
cider vinegar.
start the mopping part when you're cooking it?
So as I mentioned, I'm usually doing this overnight. So first thing in the morning, when I go out and check, I'm taking the mop out there with me. And so I'm checking the meat in the morning, hitting it with the mop a couple different times. And then I will hit it with the mop usually hourly.
Okay.
Yeah, hourly.
And you're mopping the whole thing. You're just giving a good drink of vinegar.
That's all you're doing, really.
Yeah.
You're just, some people can spritz it. I prefer the mop method. The mop really kind of goes back to whole hog.
Right.
Where it was probably really a mop, a big mop. Nowadays, you just go into the store and you're buying your little commercial
wooden
mops.
handle thing, yeah.
But that's how you get a lot of good flavor and a lot of good moisture to the meat.
While it's still
While it's
cooking
still
there
cooking.
in the later stages of it. So again, all the recipe details we'll have on our website at lowandslowbbqshow.com. And you've talked a good bit about sort of your heritage in barbecue. I want to go into those family jewels a little bit, Jeff. Talk to me about your grandfather, the butcher, and your dad, and how did you get into start smoking low and slow? What's the Jeff heritage here?
Yeah. So pretty much any family function that we had growing up. My dad's side of the family is from Greensboro, so we would go to Greensboro, and my grandfather would have, if we had a, what do you call them, the family get-togethers, family
Reunions, yeah.
So we'd have a family reunion that usually consisted of a whole hog being cooked, So you got a whole hog on a big, what I guess they call them just a big pit cooker.
Right. Okay. So he had a big 50-gallon. He wasn't doing it over
exactly.
the coal spread out into the yard.
No.
And staking it up. But on a cooker, okay.
On a cooker.
Yep.
Split down the middle, flipped over, rib side up, skin side down. Watching him sit there and man it the whole time. And then really for me, and this carries on to today, is just once it's done, just sit back and watching people enjoy it.
Yeah.
And then that carried on through to my father. So growing up, my dad was he was a big member of the volunteer fire department in Mountain View area. So pig pickings for the fire department. Those always seem to be big fun gatherings of people.
Yeah.
Cooking for them, and then just sitting back and watching them. I mean, when we talk about how young we are when we start to smoke, I'm junior in high school.
Right,
and
okay.
Me and some buddies decided that we were going to throw a pig picking.
Yeah.
And so we're just high school kids.
And you've just seen your parents and grandparents, and they probably likewise had seen it done all their lives.
Yep. So we borrowed a cooker and bought the hog, seasoned it, sat there all night long, overnight in the middle of a big field, cooked it up. Friends and party, bonfire, all that good old Southern stuff.
It sounds like a Carolina rite of passage.
That's exactly right.
Coming up in a time you've got to get into a barbecue style, and with your heritage kind of coming from Greensboro, because that's about the dividing line where they start throwing tomato sauce over towards Winston-Salem and Lexington. But you've kind of got that side of it, some heritage in there, and again a coming of age of it. So, how did it turn out as a high schooler smoking it up for the big party?
Good, man.
Good,
yeah. It's always good. We've talked about it. It's hard to mess up.
Yeah, but you've messed one up once, surely.
Oh, yeah.
What's the worst you've ever made?
Oh, the worst pulled pork I've ever made is, I mentioned earlier talking about having a story about the water pan.
Right, yeah.
And I felt so bad because we go up in the mountains, me and a group of guys every year, we'll go up and we call it the river trip. So we're going up and finding a cabin on the New River. Once we get up there, we're pretty much cut off from society, so there's nowhere to go. So bring all the food.
Self-contained.
Yeah. You're not getting up and going to the store. And one of the guys was asking me, he's like, Jeff, what's the secret to how you make such good pork every single time? And I'm like, well, the real keeping it moist and keeping its temperature going, water pan. You got to have a good water pan.
Yeah, of course.
Well, as things happen on the river trip, a day went by.
You're with your guys.
with
You're
your
in a
buddies.
contained area, out in the woods.
Yeah.
Probably more than 6 Miller Lights.
Probably way more than 6 Miller Lights. Went to go fill up the water pan, and all we had was a little coffee pot. And so something happened. I put 1 coffee pot's worth of water into the water pan.
Yeah.
Went to go back, got sidetracked, never did it again. Woke up the next morning, and
So 18 hours-ish later?
no. This is, we're talking 6 hours later.
6 later,
Is
okay,
how-
all right, yeah.
6 to 7 hours later
uh-huh.
is how quickly, without that water pan and without any water in the water pan, everything was dry and almost burnt.
Wow.
The grill was spiking close to 300.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And so
So that really makes a huge difference in there
It
between Jeff's perfect
Yep.
pulled pork and a ruined river trip.
yeah, exactly. And so you're looking around, you got probably 8 guys sitting around going, well,
All
what are we
hungry.
going to eat? And I'm like,
Yeah.
we'll salvage this. So we made the most of it.
Yeah.
We pulled it off, got it into
The bark's the best anyway, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it had a lot of bark. But that was absolutely the worst.
Yeah,
That was
the worst ever. So you mentioned the community. That's a big part of the barbecue, the world. It's, getting people together and eating and enjoying one another's company. Like you say, sitting back and watching it.
Yeah.
That's what you enjoy.
Exactly. If you're
You
if
like to
you're
eat
cooking-
it, but that's just only part of it, right?
Yeah, I do. It's a small part of it. And the biggest part is sitting back watching other people enjoy it and watching them drool and tell you how good your meat is.
Yeah.
Tell them how
Boy, Jeff's got
nice-
the best meat,
Yeah,
huh?
it's got a nice butt.
But you had to learn from somewhere, and you talked about your dad and your grandfather. In today's world, if you're trying to cook something new or you got a new product, where do you go for barbecue advice? Besides, of course, the Low and Slow Barbecue Show.
Exactly. And there's other people just like what we're doing here.
Yeah.
And that's what's so great about today's world is just how much information is so readily available to everybody. You can figure out everything.
Mm-hmm.
You can find somebody that'll teach you how to cook great barbecue in an oven. I wouldn't try it, but there are people that'll teach you.
And
So-
stay tuned. Low and Slow broadcast
That's right.
episodes coming up with that very recipe.
Nice. I can't wait to hear that one. But that, I would say YouTube, the internet.
Right.
It's got everything. You can find every different type of rub you wanted to, every method. If you want to, for the very first time, you want to cook something as brisket, fish.
Exotic,
Exotic.
or simple.
Yeah, or simple. You can find information on the web. It's really good.
What is your most proud moment, your proudest moment in barbecue in all these years of smoking? I'm sure there's a lot of them, but name one that's
Yeah. Well, that's probably when I knew that I just assumed barbecue was barbecue and we could do it anywhere. But my niece was graduating high school, and for her graduation party, they were having a big party out on the lake, and she was going to have several friends over, and that's what she wanted. She wanted Uncle Jeff's barbecue.
Yeah.
So instead of catering it or getting somebody else to cook it or buying barbecue or going to one of the restaurants around town, she wanted Uncle Jeff's barbecue.
Yeah, a great
So
pick, and why not?
That made me proud. I really paid attention to that one. I put a really good.
You didn't forget the water pan.
I did not forget the water
The
pan. on
best
this
of the
one.
best for that treatment.
Yeah, exactly. So that's proud.
And did everybody enjoy it?
Yeah, of course.
Was there any leftovers?
Tons of leftovers.
Oh, yeah, because-
it's a graduation party for girls, and so I think that they were.
She wanted barbecue, but just a taste of it.
She wanted barbecue, but I don't think that was the focus of the day.
Right. Well, a graduation party.
Yep.
All right. So let's talk for just a moment. We've talked about how you smoke it. Tell the world, what is your favorite barbecue restaurant? If you're going out into the world, what are you going to go get?
Yeah. Honestly, I joke about this with steaks too.
Yeah, yeah.
If I go to a restaurant, I'm usually not going to go to a restaurant for barbecue. There are some really good ones around. I don't typically go to barbecue restaurants. Here locally, JD's is great.
Right. In the Hickory Metro, everybody knows JD's.
JD's is great. Stamey's in Greensboro has a lot of nostalgia for me.
Okay. Yeah.
I love Stamey's. I love what they do. They chop it fine, like a Lexington.
Mm-hmm.
Stamey's has great slaw, but I will say that when graduated college, my first job, I was traveling a lot more, and I did spend a lot more time down east. And so it gave me some opportunities to go and hit some of these small little, I mean, that's the thing with barbecue restaurants is they're usually located somewhere that's very difficult to get to, that you're not just, interstates don't go by.
It's out in the wood. It's a hole in the wall. It's a very small shack. And the best thing you ever put in your mouth.
Yeah, exactly.
Comes
the
from
best
it.
thing.
Yeah.
Yep. So I've eaten at some of the big ones down east, Wilbur's and in Goldsboro. There's, like I mentioned with Stamey's in Greensboro, the other one that's closer to here, Woodlands Barbecue in Blowing Rock. Mm-hmm. Not because it has great barbecue. I mean, it's decent barbecue. It's pretty good. But it's more the nostalgia.
The nostalgia.
Place.
And that's what it's like you mentioned with Stamey's, the stuff that you grew up eating, that you knew, you like the food. Maybe it's not the best in the world, but there's a place in your heart because that's where you first had barbecue, or it's the place you found most familiar. It's the place your mom and dad liked. So,
and I will say that Stamey's, the slaw there, it's second to none. I mean,
good stuff.
It's my favorite slaw in the world.
This brings us for a good opportunity to talk about the low and slow showdown. We're going to go through some quick hitters here before we wrap it up. Some quick questions, yes or no's. Everybody knows that barbecue is all about battles, it seems like, and our world is like that too. So why not have a little showdown on the low and slow barbecue show? First of all, best Carolina barbecue style, Eastern or Western? Eastern. So whole hog,
vinegar. Red pepper flake, that's me.
No tomatoes.
And
no bun.
No bun. I love the thick, I love pulled pork because it can come off thick, and then I will dip it into my sauce.
Right.
So that vinegar-based sauce.
Using your Dr. Nefario rubber chemical gloves.
No, by this time, I'm sitting down, I'm eating.
You've shed the gloves.
I've shed the gloves.
Elbow deep.
But pulling a chunk of that, dipping it into the vinegar sauce, watching it drip off, hit the mouth, you get that blast of vinegar tang.
That sounds good. So gas, pellets, or charcoal when you're cooking it up?
Charcoal. Yeah, charcoal, hands down. Great flavor.
Best state for barbecue?
Come on, Mike. It's North Carolina.
North Carolina, of course.
I think we're the second largest producer of pork in the country. This is our heritage. This is North Carolina. There's no others.
It's barbecue heritage. We're the first in flight and first in education, and by golly, first in barbecue too, right?
I guarantee you, when those guys were flying that first airplane, there was some barbecue being smoked.
They were thinking about it, getting back on the ground and having a whole hog.
Yep.
So I guess this is a moot question, but pork, beef, or chicken?
Pork.
Okay.
Yeah,
what about sauce? You talked about vinegar. Better with or without the sauce?
For me, I like to have sauce, especially that vinegar-based sauce. It's really thin. I don't like just taking it and coating it with barbecue sauce right off the bat. So if I'm serving, I'll leave that to the preference of the individual. We'll have some tomato-based barbecue sauces out.
If somebody wants it.
If somebody wants it, because I know that there are people that do that.
Yeah.
But for me, leave the sauce off at first. Give everything a try without the sauce, and then if you want the sauce, put it on.
Good call. Sweet or spicy?
Spicy. I like that kick, man.
Yeah, a little bit of fire in there.
I like that kick.
And so barbecue, is this a verb? Is barbecue a verb or a noun, Jeff?
That is so funny. I had never heard of that, never thought about it. I couldn't even imagine that anybody would say that barbecue was a verb. The first time that I was asked that, a professor asked me, and for me, I was like, what is he asking? What kind of dumb question is this? It's like, barbecue it's a noun. It's a thing. It's something you eat. It's not something you do.
And that, my friends, is the lowdown from the backyard barbecuer himself, Jeff Osborne. Thanks for joining us today, Jeff.
My pleasure, man.
You've been listening to the Low and Slow Barbecue Show on the Mesh.tv. Be sure to listen to us online at lowandslowbbqshow.com. That's where you can find recipes and notes from today's episode. You'll also access other episodes in this podcast series. Look for episodes featuring a pioneer in how to barbecue, the food truck smokehouse, the commercial cooks, and more. Plus, if you subscribe to Low and Slow Barbecue Podcast, we'll deliver more right to your stream every time there's a new episode. Special thanks to my guest, the backyard barbecuer Jeff Osborne. Thanks as well to the production team here at the Mesh.tv. And most especially, thank you for listening to the Low and Slow Barbecue Show. I'm Chigger Willard reminding you that for the best barbecue and for the best barbecue podcast, make it low and slow.
You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.